I'll take a chip and eat it! Hey guys, what's up? It's the Closure Detective here, investigating your favorite animes, and this is a special review because I'm going to do a review on Death Note. Death Note, written by Oba Tsugumi, illustrated by Obata Takeshi, is a manga later adapted into an anime under Studio Madhouse and released in the year 2006 all the way till 2007. Death Note, also one of the most popular animes of all times. I finally watched it, and it's exquisite. It is exquisite. So it is a 37 episode long mini-series. It doesn't have a season 2, and I hope it doesn't, because if it has, then it's gonna be puke. But Death Note itself is 37 episodes long, and it is one of the most popular and most talked about animes of all times. And yeah, when I started watching animes, I didn't want to watch like a classic immediately because I was afraid that I wouldn't get it. The same way why I was hesitant when I wanted to watch movies like The Godfather or Silence of the Lambs, because I thought I wouldn't get it if I watch it too early. So yeah, I started watching anime in 2019, and I had to wait like 2 years in order to finally watch Death Note. And I finally did, and honestly, I don't care if you have seen enough animes to get this or not. Death Note is very accessible, and it is entertaining as hell. It is very fast paced. It doesn't beat around the bush at all, and it is pure genius. Also, like the Attack on Titan review, I'm gonna sometimes talk like this right here, and sometimes I'm gonna show a lot of graphics and videos on the screen. But essentially, Death Note is directed by Araki Tetsuro, who is one of the best directors in the anime industry nowadays. He directed Death Note, and then he would go on to direct Attack on Titan, High School of the Dead, Guilty Crown, and we also have the first opening and ending themes. Both songs by a band called Nightmare, and even though usually I hate anime openings which are basically just passionate rock song, but Nightmare's The World as the opening theme is actually really friggin' good. Not only is the song itself well written and it sounds fantastic, but also it really fits the kind of dark and grim and depressing tone of the story, and also the edgy tone of the story really well, and the ending is really nice as well. Essentially, Death Note is an anime about a super smart high school student, Yagami Light. He picked up a Death Note, and it's not your average notebook, because if you write a name down on the notebook, the person with that name is going to die with a heart attack unless you write down specifically how that person is going to die. And this Death Note originally belongs to a Shinigami, or a death god. He belongs to the death realm. He accidentally dropped that notebook to the human world and got picked up by a human. And this isn't the first time that ever happened, but it's the first time that it happened this dramatically. A lot of people complain about Death Note, saying that it's not perfect, and I agree, Death Note is not perfect. It has flaws. But a lot of people say that the last 12 episodes of Death Note are shit. Well, I disagree. I think the last 12 episodes aren't as good as the previous ones, but they are still really good. They're still more well written than many other animes out there. So yeah, while this anime isn't completely perfect from start to end, it is still a masterpiece overall. Anyways, let's start off with the first 8 episodes. Episode 1 is the pilot episode, and rarely do I find a pilot episode of any series this friggin' entertaining. Usually in a TV show or an anime, the episode 1 is usually confusing, slow paced, because the whole episode just focuses on the world building and exposition, setting up the events for the actual story to happen. But in Death Note, it doesn't do that. In Death Note, something already immediately happens. It's really entertaining, really fast-paced, and really eventful in that it immediately hooks its audience, and I'm impressed at how fast the writer can hook its audience. Just within 15 minutes or so, it's already immediately interesting. We also have the character of Ryuku, who is the Shinigami who accidentally dropped the notebook onto the human world, and so Yagami Light picked it up, and Ryuku had to accompany Yagami Light until the notebook is destroyed or Yagami Light dies. That is kind of one of the rules of Death Note, really. There are also a lot of other rules, and I can't go over them all right now, but there are rules. And that also goes on to say how carefully and cleverly written the story is, because usually when we have a story premise this ridiculous, like writing a name on a notebook is actually going to kill the person, and there would usually be a lot of plot holes, but because there are these rules, there are actually almost no plot holes in this story. If you misspell the person's name, it's not going to work. If you misspelled it 4 times on purpose, it will work. If you write the name over several pages, it will not work. But if you write the name on the cover, it will still work. It will still consider valid. If you write a nickname, it will not work. And there's also, like, you can write the cause of death, and you can use this to your advantage by manipulating the person to do specific things right before they die, and you can actually test out how specific it can be and how much possibilities there can be for a cause of death. It's very smartly written. It's very carefully written. Anyways, the first 8 episodes are all amazing. Immediately starting off, we have the police force in Japan forming a special task force to find Yagami Light, aka Kira. People have been calling him Kira. Essentially, with Death Note, he wants to kill all the bad people in the world and make the world a better place. Simple as that. But that is wrong. That is wrong, because criminals, murderers, yeah, they suck and they deserve bad things happening to them, but they still need to go through the due process of law. They can't just die. Kira, this teenage boy, can't be the judge of all. He can't play God. So we have the police force forming a special task force to find Kira, and the leader of that task force is the one and only super genius detective L. And L has got to be one of my favorite characters in all animes. L is really smart. He's also really interesting. He dresses and acts eccentrically. And right off the bat, on episode 2, L basically declared war on Kira. And for the rest of the anime, it's essentially the ultimate mind games between L and Kira. Both extremely smart, and the mind games, just watching them unfold and watching L and Kira come up with these crazy master plans against one another is in and of itself already extremely entertaining. Of course, L isn't really the only person who is in on catching Kira. We also have the FBI, but of course the FBI isn't as smart as Kira. And since Kira somehow got top secret classified information from the police, L deduced that Kira is actually related to a certain police member. And so it is narrowed down into a few people already at around episodes 4 or 5. And FBI simultaneously were also investigating these few people, including Kira. And this is when the FBI is heavily involved in the story. And seeing Kira, how he handled the FBI situation is breathtakingly smart. It is just such a complicated plan, but it's such a great plan at the same time. And I'm not gonna try to spoil anything, but when you see the plan unfold, it's just like, oh Oh. Oh! Oh! No! No! At some point at around episode 6, I already started rooting for L more than I do for Light, because ultimately Light has the upper hand. He has a friggin' surefire killer weapon where you can just write a name and the person dies. And the police force, they are actually at a lower hand. More and more policemen decided to quit the task force because they don't want to die. And so there are fewer and fewer members of the police who are actually, and one of the police members who are still passionate about catching Kira is Yagami Light's father, Soichiro. Yagami Soichiro. And that also complicated many things. But yeah, we have episode 7 where Yagami Light basically ran into an ex-FBI agent who has some very important information for the police force. And Yagami Light came so close to losing. If that ex-FBI agent told the police force that information, the police force would find Yagami Light in no time. So Yagami Light had to literally intervene that person while she was on the way to the police station. And that came so close. It was like Breaking Bad levels of close. And that episode is also one of the most haunting and chilling, like bone-chilling episodes of the entire anime, where Yagami Light tries so hard to get that person's name so that he can immediately write the note in the public and kill her. And it was just so close because that person is determined to go to the police department, and Yagami Light had to follow her and make up lies after lies after lies just to get her real name. And it's just this incredibly intense, nail-biting, edge-of-the-seat intense scene where the ex-FBI person just have no idea what's going on, but as the viewer you're like, don't say your real name, don't say your real name, don't say your real name, no! And that silence bit at the end, that is one very impressive showcase of how amazing the directing in this anime is. Yeah, episode 7. Oh my god. Then we have episodes 9 to 15, where things complicated even further when L did the one thing that he would never ever do. He revealed himself. For the entire time in history, L has always been anonymous. He never shows his face, he never shows his real name, but he decides to do it in front of Yagami Light, because Yagami Light is a suspect and he decides to investigate the suspect up close. So he straight up revealed himself. And Yagami Light soon learned that L really is L, and there's just a lot of tension. So what happened is that L invited Yagami Light to join the police task force to catch Kira. So Kira is literally among the people who are trying to catch Kira. Kira is literally in an upper hand right now. But the way the story unfolds, L always has a plan, and L isn't just doing this because he's careless. He actually has a plan. Again, the mind games, it's absolutely insane. And things complicated even further when we have Amane Misa, or Misa-Misa, who is the second Kira. That's right, there is a second Kira. Rem, another death god, dropped a notebook, or not dropped, but he went to the human world and gave a notebook to a girl that she likes, and that is Misa-Misa. And Misa is a hardcore Kira worshipper. She likes Kira because Kira killed the burglars who killed Misa's parents. And Misa at the same time is a model and an idol singer as well. And so Misa-Misa, a very popular idol in Japan, actually being the secret Kira, the secret second Kira is absolutely insane, but the way L and the police task force figured out a way to test this hypothesis is amazing. A lot of these catching murderer TV shows and animes are very careless, not very careless, but they're usually more straightforward. But in Death Note, whenever people have theories and hypotheses, they always test it out because it's just that carefully written. But yeah, episode 15, the telephone scene, is another highlight on the series for me, where here's the thing. If you have the Death Note, you can actually make a deal with the Shinigami to get the Shinigami eyes, where essentially if you have the eyes, you can see people's real names and their lifespans without asking for them. And Misa-Misa made the deal and has those eyes. So Misa-Misa saw L and saw his real name, and Misa-Misa secretly contacted Yagami Light, but right before Yagami Light could call Misa-Misa and ask Misa-Misa what is L's real name, L steals her phone. Then we have episodes 16 to 17, which are the confinement episodes, and these episodes made me realize how ambitious this story is, because a lot of time actually passed throughout this anime, where in the beginning it's like, oh, this is happening on day 1, day 2, day 3, and then there would be time jumps, like 2 weeks later, this is happening now, 3 weeks later, a couple months had passed, and a long time has passed between episodes 16 and 17, where essentially L really suspects that Yagami Light is Kira, and that Misa-Misa is the second Kira. And because of that, Yagami Light's dad was really worried for Kira, and he decided to confine himself. And L also confined Misa-Misa, and Yagami Light himself also decided to voluntarily be confined so that he can clear his name. Like, I'm going to confine myself. Remember, I'm not Kira. So, that's why I'm doing something like this. And these are the confinement episodes, and they sort of start slowing down. They're definitely more slow-paced than the first 15 episodes, but still, they're really well written. The mind games are still going on. And this is a very desperate situation where people are literally confined in prison cells for about 50 days, and it sort of ends in this execution episode where L pulls one final trick to try to get Yagami Light and Misa-Misa to confess, and that trick didn't work. Why? So from this point on, I'm going to give a minor spoiler alert, but I have to, because I have to talk about the spoilers of this anime. So essentially, when you touch the Death Note, you become the owner. But you can actually relinquish the ownership and hand that Death Note to someone else. And it's temporary, but while you don't own that Death Note, all memories of that Death Note will disappear, meaning that you're basically going to have an amnesia. And that's exactly what happened to Yagami Light and Misa-Misa. They relinquished their ownership, and they are actually literally innocent at that point. But that is only a part of Light's master plan, to give that Death Note to some other person and then have the police catch that other person, blame that other person for being Kira, and then Light will secretly get that Death Note back and retrieve all his memories. Same goes for Misa-Misa, and that way Kira can win over the police force. And that's basically what happened on episodes 18 to 23, the Yotsuba arc, where essentially some other guy in this company, Yotsuba, is now the third Kira. And the police force found him out real easily because the guy is stupid. And yeah, while these episodes are not as good as the previous ones, the story is still really well written. There are still a lot of intense moments, lots of twists and turns, ups and downs, especially episode 23, where L created this master plan to tell the real name of Matsuda, one of the police officers in the task force, to the third Kira. The third Kira tries to find his real name, and by doing that, they lure the third Kira out of his place while holding the Death Note, and then arrest him on the way. And that is crazy. That is friggin' crazy. And that is an amazing episode. But speaking of Matsuda, we have episode 19, which is also called Matsuda, where Matsuda is basically the underdog of that police force. He is the least brightest, the dimmest, and he is the least useful in that team, but he really wants to make himself useful. So he straight up strolled into the Yotsuba building and messed up. And so L had to create another really smart plan to rescue Matsuda, and that was also absolutely insane. I also forgot to mention that the second OP of Death Note has got to be one of my favorite anime OPs of all times, up there with some of the best JoJo OPs and some of the best Monogatari OPs. The color palettes, the action, the way the music fits with the visuals are absolutely phenomenal. You know me, I really hate it when anime OPs look like it could be one of the scenes inside the anime and it's just extracted out of the anime and it's like a compilation or a montage of the clips from the anime. It really annoys me. I really love it when animes are more creative with its visuals and action, and this second OP of Death Note has that really compelling and driving energy to it, which I really love, and all the quirkiness and the insanity and the edginess of it. The explosive, super choppy ending is fantastic, and again, the color palettes, I love the color palettes of the OP. It's just really visually stunning. And also the thrash metal, the distorted guitars, the growls by Maximus, the hormone, the song is called What's Up People, and these guitars and drums, they just bring so much energy to the story. It's like a really violent bang in the head before every single episode, and I love it. But anyways, what came after was episodes 24 and 25, and these two episodes are two of the best episodes in the entirety of Death Note, where episode 24 is the final stage of Light's master plan to retrieve the Death Note, to steal the Death Note back from the third Kira, back to himself, and retrieve all the memories. And that was horrifying. That was horrifying. And all this happened while L did not notice. And then we have episode 25, where L finally noticed, and he already knew that it's too late. And episode 25 is probably one of the best anime episodes I've ever watched. It is a pure masterpiece. And I'm not saying it's a masterpiece because it's super entertaining, it's super action-packed, it has so many twists and turns. No, that's not why episode 25 is so great. The reason why episode 25 is so great is that it finally reaches a point beyond life. Okay, so spoiler alert from this point on, but basically L dies. L dies on episode 25. First of all, I really admire the writer for making this decision. A lot of people are like, what, L? Literally the second most important character in Death Note just dies on episode 25? What? How can you do that? But I admire this decision. I respect this decision a lot because it subverts our expectations. And usually when writers try to subvert our expectations, it ends up not making any sense whatsoever, like Game of Thrones last season. But the writer, All About Tsugumi, actually does it in such a powerful way. You can't help but just admire how powerful and just bone-chilling this scene is, L's death scene. But episode 25 started off with these bells, and a lot of people are like, oh, these must be flashbacks of L's childhood. I disagree. After watching episode 25, I think these are flash forwards. And these bells aren't just any bells. They are bells from a funeral bell. Essentially, right at the beginning of the episode, we are already at L's funeral. and L himself could also hear it in present day. There's one scene where he stands on the rooftop, depressed, while raining, and he's like, I can hear bells in distance. Light was there, and L asked Light, can you hear these bells? And Light's like, man, you're just tired. Just go back indoors, you know? But the reason why L could hear these bells is because he knew that he's going to die soon, and he hear these funeral bells, figuratively, meaning that he knows that his death is coming. And then immediately afterwards, we have a scene where L voluntarily washes Light's feet. And a lot of people who watch this scene are like, wow, they are gay. This scene must mean that they are gay. No, man. That's not the point of this scene. L washing Light's feet is actually a biblical symbolism, which is basically like Jesus washing the feet of sinners. And this also kind of throws back to the Last Supper, where Jesus acts really kind and generous to his disciples, even though one of the disciples basically betrayed Jesus. And Jesus at that point knew that, I forgot his name, but Jesus knew that he was betrayed, and Jesus knew that he was going to die. And there are so many parallels with that in this episode, where L knows that he's going to die. And L knows in his heart that Yagami Light is Kira, but yet he humbly washes Kira's feet, knowing that he's going to be killed. And we have the death scene itself, and it's bone-chilling. It happens out of nowhere, and it happens so powerfully and impactfully, especially given the fact that L already knew that this is going to happen. And we even see Yagami Light grinning evilly, just smirking while watching L die. And it's haunting. It's a haunting moment in the anime. And once again, I have to applaud Tetsuro Araki for directing this episode so masterfully. If it weren't for the very amazing and sort of powerful soundtrack and the uses of silence and color palettes and dramatic lighting, it wouldn't have worked as well. Anyways, we have the last 12 episodes 26 to 37, and yeah, they are 12 episodes. And yeah, this is the point where people started to drop the series. Man, L is dead, there's no point in watching it, so a lot of people dropped it. But in my opinion, the last 12 episodes are still really good and really well written, even though it's nowhere near as ingenious as the first episodes. These 12 episodes, still good. Of course, we have episode 26, where a bulk of the episode is basically one super long recap. That is a little annoying. I don't need that. Episode 21 is also a really slow episode where people just don't know what to do, don't know what's going on, because L is dead. Nobody knows what to do. But from episode 28 onwards, things are happening. Essentially, L has two successors, Nier and Mello. And both Nier and Mello are assigned to avenge L by catching Kira. And so the game is on again. And even though Nier and Mello aren't as smart as L, there are still a lot of really smart moments. And still, that being said, the real reason why these episodes aren't as good as the episodes before isn't because the stakes are lower. In fact, the stakes are higher. Now that there are two people catching Kira instead of one, the stakes are higher. But the reason why it's not as good is because the stakes are different. Instead of L versus Light, it's more like Nier versus Mello. There is a there is a part of the story where it's basically a rivalry between Nier and Mello. And it's pretty much one-sided because Mello is jealous of Nier, but Nier basically doesn't care. He just wants to catch this Kira guy. The last 12 episodes are also a little bit less carefully written. Again, in the first few episodes, it's really carefully written. Everything Kira does, everything Yagami Light does, is masterfully down to the specifics. But in the last 12 episodes, somehow Yagami Light just has the phone number of the president of the USA and forced the president to reveal the real names of Nier, even though that actually didn't work. But somehow he has the president's phone number, somehow. And also, 3 years have passed, and Yagami Light basically became the L. And that also complicated things a lot, and I really like that. But from episodes 29 onwards, it's just one really well-written episode after another. Again, episode 29 also featured a huge character death scene, which, again, I really admire the writer for writing such a character death scene. And it's also a really sad death scene that make us, the viewers, hate Yagami Light even more. But yeah, it was a very powerful and a really tragic death scene. We didn't anticipate that at all. But immediately after that death scene, there are only a few people in the police task force who are actually competent enough to catch Kira. And that person is Aizawa, who became the person that I root for the most in the last few episodes. I don't even root for Nier all that much because, yeah, Nier is smart and all, but I really don't find Nier that likable of a character. But I really like Aizawa because he really has a sense of justice. He's really passionate about finding Kira after all these years. And so it's basically Aizawa versus Yagami Light at this point, and it's just very scary, especially when Light at the very end still manages to expand his network. So yeah, he does expand his network at the very end when he finds himself an ex-Kira, a person who is going to write down names on behalf of Kira. While Yagami Light still owns the Death Note, he is basically sharing that Death Note with ex-Kira, whose real name is Mikami. And there's also a middle person in between Mikami and Light. And so Light establishes these connections and try to use these connections against the police force and Nier and Mello. And we have the ending where Nier wins. And it's a powerful ending. It is, first of all, episode 36 is extremely intense. The final few seconds of that episode makes my heart race. It's so intense because a person dies 40 seconds after their names are written. And somebody actually wrote Nier's name and everyone else's names on a notebook. And it's like, oh my god, is it gonna actually happen? Are they dying? Is Light actually winning? What? And that was absolutely insane. And then we have episode 37, which is also very powerful, with the very dramatic orchestral strings and the very beautiful sunset background. We see Light's final moments, and it is beautiful, it is powerful, and it is tragic as hell. And we see Light dying on the stairs, and it's like he regrets everything that he's done, and there's just something really tragic about it. And there's also something so faithful about this ending. You know, they're not trying to pull off anything crazy to revert the whole plot or anything. It's very faithful, it's very solid, and I really, really love it, and it really lasts a strong impression on me. This episode almost made me want to give this a 10 out of 10, to be honest. Even though there are still flaws in this anime, I really enjoy this anime more so than I enjoy many other 9 out of 10 animes. I forgot to mention that memes like Who's Rem and All According to Keikaku are also from Death Note. So that's pretty cool. That's a fun fact. The voice acting is amazing. Miyano Mamoru as Light is one of the best anime performances I've ever encountered. And also, Yamaguchi Kappei as L is amazing as well. And yes, again, this anime is not without its flaws. There are moments in this anime where things slow down, but still, compare Death Note to other animes I've given a 9 out of 10, like ReZero Season 2 Part 2, and Beastars and JoJo Part 4. Death Note is still an entire level above them, but I can't say that it is perfect. So I'm going to give Death Note somewhere in between a strong 9 and a 10. But if I had to really pick a score, unfortunately, but still very impressively, I'm going to give Death Note a strong 9 out of 10. So, have you watched Death Note? From 1 to 10, I would just rate it, like it, and subscribe if you want more. And thanks for watching.